Do you like to use your scraps and create your own custom clusters? In this video, I'm going to share with you all of my best tips on how to create these beautiful clusters with one stamp set. Hi there, I'm Julie. In today's video, I'm going to share with you how to create your very own custom embellishments for your scrapbook layouts and cards. So you're going to want to stick around until the end where I show you how to use all of your scraps. In today's video, we are using the stamp of the month for the month of September, and take a look at this stamp. If you love vintage stamps or if you love this kind of look, this one is a must-have for sure. When I saw this, I immediately thought of my baby album I've been working on, and I thought it would be really great to create my own custom embellishments. I don't know about you, but when you're making a theme album and you're starting to run low on papers and embellishments, having your very own or creating your very own is really the way to go. So I'm going to walk you through some of the steps for this layout right here. So this layout right here is in 8.5 by 11. I'm using this sketch here, and you can see here that there's a lot of flowers on this layout, and I don't have the same size photos because these are original photos and they were done square, so I was able to blow them up a little bit, but they are not in the same orientation or size as the sketch, but that's fine. This is just a jumping start. So I'm going to adhere all of my papers down, and we're going to start to play with these stamped images here. Now you can see that I have a whole mess of stuff here on the side. I did go ahead and I did stamp all of these images using the stamp of the month, and this one lends itself to pretty much anything. Scrapbooking, card making, junk journaling, anything, because it is so easy to create clusters with it and layer it up. Part of layering up this really awesome stamp is I was able to go through all of my little bits and pieces. Now, this is a theme album, and I've kept a lot of my little pieces in here that I haven't used, and I thought this would be a really good opportunity to start layering up and creating like chunky clusters if you want. So I did go ahead and I brought back these were part of the Cosette collection, and as you can see here, I have a few, and they were just really small when I was doing a 12 by 12 layout, but I'm going to use them in a cluster, and I think that they're going to work. Now these leaves here, I cut up a whole bunch of them. They were all done in white. I added a little bit of Seabrook, and at the bottom here I did add a little bit of pine ink, and I think that they're going to match my layout. So this is the fun thing about creating your own embellishment clusters. You can actually customize them to the project that you are working on. Now you can see here that I've got some tags in the craft that will work. I've got some remnant pieces here in vellum that surely will work. I just have a whole mess of stuff that I think I can definitely use. I have, like many of you, a little bucket or a little container where I keep a lot of my die cuts, or some flowers that I did and I just didn't end up using. Oh, I've got another bracket here. I'm sure I can use them. So yes, these are done in white, but I was able to color some, so I can actually color them and add them to my layout here. So I'm going to pull this one out. I've got a couple of circles here. So these were stitch circle for another project. I think that that might work. It's not exactly the same color, but I think that it might work. Go through your little bits and pieces, because we all keep them for a rainy day, and guess what? This is the day. All right, so I'm going to put this together, and then we're going to start building our clusters for this layout. I think you're really going to like it. Let's take a look at the sketch right here, and these bottom pieces are all ripped, and I think that that's going to look really, really good with this layout, and it kind of has that look and feel. So I am going to rip towards me because I do want to see the white edge exposed. So this again is the mix-in paper. I've been mixing it in this project, and I brought back the For Always paper. I did use that on my last layout, and that one too mixes well with this theme album. So again, I'm ripping towards me, and this one here is in the Seabrook. I really like that nice little dainty detail on here, and it is the mix-in. So again, ripping towards me, and I tend to do that all in one pass. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I do a technique or like just ripping or inking, I do it all in one sitting, because from one day to the next, or even from 1 minute to the next, I don't know, my hands work differently. So I tend to do all of that in one pass. You saw that I kind of curled up all of the edges, and I'm going to adhere all of those pieces down. Now I am adding the adhesive at the bottom of that strip, so I can actually tuck the other ones in just like so. I'm going to go ahead and adhere all of these bottom pieces down, and I really like the way my base pages are looking. Now they are subtle because I know I'm going to add pretty big clusters to these 2 pages, and I didn't want to overwhelm that with a busy background. So we're going to start with our stamped images right here, and you can see that I've distributed them across the 2 pages. This one here is going to be tucked underneath. And we're going to start customizing these to our layout and the theme of this album. So let's move everything to the side, and I'm going to start to do a little bit of ink distressing. I'm going to start with the Seabrook right here, and I'm going to add it to a specific part of the stamp image. So right, this one here is on the left hand side, so I'm going ahead here in the center and I'm adding the Seabrook, and you can see here that I can add that ink to specific areas of this stamp image to make it pop on my layout. I'm going to bring in a little bit of mulberry, and then we're going to start with the one on the right hand side. I know I'm going to see the cluster of flower on that one, so I'm going to add a little bit of mulberry on that side, and then we're going to add some to the butterfly. Of course the butterfly had to be pink, so we're going to add some here to the butterfly in the center, and I'm going to keep on building my ink onto my stamp images until I'm happy with the look. Now hang tight, we're going to cut these. They're not going to stay like this, but I found that it was a lot easier just to do the ink blending if I kept them in a bigger size so that I could hold on to them. So the next step is we are going to fussy cut these little images right here. They're actually not that hard to fussy cut, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to cut all around these images, and it kind of cleans up my little mess that I did with the ink blending, and it looks good when it's coming off the edge like that. But we are going to add a little bit of toffee ink on the edges of those cut pieces once they're all cut down. Let's take a look at our embellishments now that they've been colored and cut. And you can see that they really do match my layout, and they have been completely customized. Now you could stop right here, but I do want to make them kind of oversized, and I'm going to use a lot of the pieces that I have on the left hand side. I'm going to use a whole bunch to further embellish them. So you can see here that I have a mess of things. I've went through my little box, and I also went through all of my cut things that I had in my scrapbooking room, and I picked out all of the like items and things that matched the project I was working on. So let's take a look at these. I've got a lot of leaves. I've got a lot of those little pieces. Those were from the Cosette. I have some random circles, a little bit of vellum. I've got these really nice black ones that have been cut, but I think they're going to be too strong against this layout, so maybe we're not going to use those. So let's just go for it. I'm going to start with the items that I have the most of. So those leaves are the ones that I have the most of, so I'm going to tuck them here and there. I'm trying not to overthink it at this point. I'm just trying to distribute some of the pieces that I have. Now, you know what? In hindsight, I should have started with those craft tags, and you'll see why as I'm building my cluster. I think that it would have been an easier way to build the cluster. You kind of need something to ground all of your pieces. And during this process right here, I thought that the stamp image was enough, but hang tight and you'll see how this progresses, how we're moving along. So I've got all of my little sprigs, if you want, because that's what I have the most of. And I'm moving them here and there. And the end result is also going to change because I end up moving them again. But you can see that I'm just distributing like items in my clusters. I know that I have 3, and I know that I want to have similar things in all of the clusters. So that looks pretty good. And you know what? You could stop here. I kind of went maybe overboard on my clusters. You let me know what you think when you see the end result. So the next thing that I have a lot of are these little die cuts from the Cosette collection. I did ink them a little bit so that they stand out a little bit more, and I'm doing the same thing here. I'm distributing them against my 3 clusters. I really like this ampersand, and I have a little bit of space here. I've got more space to play with on the right hand side, so I was able to add a little bit more. So let's take a look at what else we can add. And again, at any time you could stop. I have this little piece of doily. I really like the vellum, but I only had 1 cut piece. So I'm going to trim it into 3 little sections because I'm trying to use what I have. And I'm going to tuck those. Again, I'm distributing them across all 3 of my little clusters here. And honestly, when I did that, I thought, you know what, this is really, really small. And I could see the cut edges, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And I'm going to end up cheating, if you want, and cut a brand new doily. But here you see me going through my little box of goodies, and I had these little stamped leaves, and they look good. So I'm going to tuck them underneath to create more layers. And I was just lucky I actually had 3 of them. So that's always a good day when you can use up your scraps and you have enough to distribute throughout your little clusters. So you can see here that I've got my little cut ones that were done on my Cricut. I've got my stamp ones. This is the little film strip that comes with the stamp set. And I did do it in mulberry, and I wasn't sure if it was too much. And I think that it's that right punch of color for each of the clusters. So again, I'm trying to bring 1 to each of the clusters, and the one that's going down at the bottom on the right hand side ends up moving because it's just kind of weird. So we're going to just move that. Let's just move it to the other side. And you'll see that this is where, had I started with my larger images, which are my tags here, I think I would have had a better base to build my clusters. You let me know how you start your clusters, if you start with like larger elements and then add the little ones in. I think my main focus was to group like items and find good pieces to work with, like this little doily piece. Now you might say that this is a cheat. I ended up cutting a big one and a small one in the center, and I just felt that it was a lot prettier on the layout. Now had I not had this in my scraps, I may not have thought of adding this doily to this layout, but I'm really glad that I took the time and I did cut a new piece, and it just brings that really pretty soft look to the clusters. I was just about to kind of adhere everything down, and then something wasn't sitting well with me. And it was these ones, the featured, if you want, piece of the cluster. The clusters are very busy and very big. And originally I stamped these using archival black ink. I thought that, you know, this is waterproof, and it's gonna have a really nice crisp black. But even after waiting overnight, because I stamped those last night, I see bleeding of the ink. I don't know if you can see that, but I see bleeding of the ink, and I didn't like it as much. And also, when I was looking at my clusters just before, again, adhering everything, I felt that There's a lot going on. You know, you've got the stamp, you've got the ink blending, you've got the distress edges. It is cute, and I think that this would look really good on a card, but because I've got so much on my layouts right here, I think that it's too much. Let me know what you think. So then I went ahead and I just stamped these just with black, just regular black ink. And I did the same thing. I did the ink blending, but can you see how soft it is? It's a little bit softer. And I did add all of the ink on the edges with the toffee, but I didn't distress it. And I just find that it's a little bit softer because we have so much going on. So this is going underneath. So let me show you here with the butterfly, and you might be able to see it a little bit more. So see here, there's a little bit of bleeding, not much really, but to me I could see it, and all of the roughness against all of the busyness here, I don't know, I wasn't feeling it, so I decided to start over. And here I find that it's a little bit softer. The blending itself looks better to me. Let me know what you think. Like, was this worth a redo? I don't know why, but this album, I guess it's taken me so long to put it together. I just want to be happy with it. And really, this is the great thing about building your own embellishments. If you're not happy on how they turn out, you can redo them. So if you look at these two here, do you see you've got a little bit of a haze and it's a little bit of a gray? But here you have the color more predominant. Again, let me know what you think, but I'm going to go ahead now. I'm happy with my little clusters. I'm also going to change these ones right here. These ones were roughed up again, and I think that it doesn't need it. I think there's enough going on. So let me start adhering everything down. I wanted to talk to you about the changes that you can see here on the right-hand page. Everything got shifted over, and I'm going to explain to you why. When I added that full doily, it kind of created these little edges or these little empty spaces or dead spaces. I don't know what you want to call them, but they don't look good. Like, in order for your clusters to look good, you really have to have kind of everything touching each other. So let's take these pieces out and you'll see what I mean. So I'm just going to reveal my little doily. Even though it's vellum, you see the cut edges right here, and I didn't really like that. So I'm going to have to kind of camouflage everything. And also I had my tag at the bottom and that wasn't sitting well with me. So I'm going to put it back at the top, and I'm going to angle them so that they're kind of angled together. And then I'm going to add my pieces to hide, if you want, the cut piece of the vellum. So we're going to start right here at the top. I've got that little edge right there that I want to address, and that one at the bottom. So we're going to add the stamped one right here. So that's going to cover that edge. And then we're going to have our little foliage at the top, so I'm happy with that. And then here at the bottom, I'm just going to place this one, and then I'm going to add my stamped image, which is going to cover pretty much all of that center. And I do want to expose that flower, if you want, on that stamp set, so that's going to go right here. So that is kind of hiding that. And then we just have this little piece here to address, and I think that that film strip is going to do the job. So we're going to tuck that underneath and underneath the photo, and I'm going to angle it because I don't want to have a blunt edge. And then all of this cluster is really, really big. I find that the ampersand now looks really great on the cluster. It shows up more when it's against the tag. So we're going to add this little arrow right here somewhere. I know that I need to leave myself some space for journaling because I do have a story to tell, and I'm not leaving myself a lot of space. So I might have to squish that up a tiny little bit. Again, another benefit of customizing your clusters to your project. We are in the home stretch of this layout, and first I have to add a little bow to my tag. If you know my good friend Katie, you cannot leave a little hole empty. You gotta fill it with something. And you know what? She's right. I do like the ad of the little bow. Those are just bows made with twine from my stash. I think it's mink twine, so it fit really nicely. I will do my journaling after, but let me know what you think of these clusters. Now they are big and they are substantial, but I really do like them. I wanted to use stuff that I had in my little box. I wanted to use stuff that I had in my pre-cut pieces, and I think that I picked a lot of the right elements to create these clusters. Now definitely that stamp set is the star of the cluster, and by adding like items across all three of them, I think that it looks really, really good. So if scrapbooking isn't your jam, let me show you how to create beautiful clusters for cards or junk journaling. Definitely these clusters on my layout were really busy, but let's see what we can do for cards. The first thing I wanted to do was add a little bit of shimmer with some of my shimmer brushes. So I have a mulberry brush, and that one worked out really, really nicely. And I also have a mist. So I found that with my brushes, as long as you don't add too much shimmer to whatever you are coloring, they work really, really well. It's just a matter of less is more. So for these ones here, so we're going to call these the featured images. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rip them, and I'm using just my water brush here just to have a more precise rip, because I want to go around some of these edges. And I just find that when you add a little bit of water, it just makes it so much easier. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that for all of these cut pieces. And I'm also going to curl up the edges, as you can see me doing right here. Now, very much like I did for the scrapbook clusters, I'm going to add pieces to my stamped image right here. So I'm just kind of figuring out where I want to add those pieces, and I did use quite a bit for the layout, so I don't have as many choices, I guess, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. So I'm just going to go ahead here and add those in. I've got a few pennants here, and I think that's going to look good. And this is just the beginning of kind of putting things together that I feel like would match or would go. This is an extra one. I'm not going to use it today. And then here I've got, one random little sprig and a couple more here. I'm going to dig into my little box, and you'll see that as I start building these clusters, I'm not going to use all of the pieces that I'm kind of separating out right now, but it just gives me a good variety, if you want, of different things to put in a cluster. And these are all going to be sized to go on a card front, so on an A2 size card front. So here I've got, there's that little doily again. Maybe it will make an appearance on these clusters. These were little stamp flowers that I had, and you can see that I'm really using up all of those random little pieces that would probably stay in that box for a long time. So when you build a cluster, you can just grab it in a pinch and create a card. I'm not going to add the sentiments to these clusters, only because I want to give myself an opportunity to turn these into thank you cards or birthday cards. I am going to use that small little stamp sentiment, so that one is definitely going to be a card. And who knows, these might make an appearance in my scrapbook. Sometimes it's really fun when you can just grab something that's already made and it matches the project that you are working on. So see that? Not much left in here. Let's use that butterfly because he's pretty cute. But I think I'm done. I'm done sorting out all of those small pieces. I'm bringing back these random circles that I don't know why I have them, but I have them. So let's try and use them. And then we're going to build some fun clusters together. So that's it. I've picked up all of the pieces that I want to use, and now we're going to use paper. So again, these are small pieces of paper, not big pieces. And sometimes we throw these out, but I'm going to try and make good use out of them. So you can see here that those pieces of pattern paper are not very, very big. And I'm again distributing them across all of my clusters just to kind of give myself enough options. Now for the base of my cluster, I'm going to use this sheet of pattern paper and this die. and I'm going to tell you why in just a moment. This is from the Cosette Card Making, so you can see where I'm going, right? This is going to be the perfect size for me to build my cluster on so that it's not oversized, that I still kind of stay inside the lines if you want, and all of my clusters will fit on an A2 size card. So I did cut a few of these. And the other thing that I like is with my project, if I use it on a scrapbook layout, it's still not going to compete with the base page, hopefully. So this is like a 3 by 4¼ so very good size for a card front. So let's start here, and while I was cleaning up and looking for things, I came across these little sprigs right here. Sprigs are great for clusters. You can just add them here and there on the cluster, and it just really adds that really nice detail. So I'm gonna again kind of throw them on randomly on my little piles, and we're gonna start building the first one together. Now the first one is usually the hardest one to start with, but if you look at what I have on my desk here, I've got a lot of shapes that are similar. So once I get my groove going, I think that I'm gonna be able to create a few clusters, and it shouldn't take too long. Now if you're wondering how long did this actually take, I looked at the time on my video and it was about an hour. So in about an hour you can take all of your scraps and you can make something really pretty for cards or for scrapbook layouts. The great thing about customizing them, and I am mindful here, I am doing them so that if I need to reach for an embellishment that I don't have for this particular project, I can reach for these guys right here. So I'm using a lot of the same colors, and I'm going to add a little bit of ink on the back and on this tag right here, and we're just going to add some of our pieces. Now you'll see that I jump around from left to right or right to left. I'm just trying to find a balance. And if the cluster isn't coming together naturally, set it aside and work on a different one. It shouldn't be that much of a struggle. Like, see that circle? It doesn't really look good to me. But I'm kind of going with it at this point. I'm going to cut it in half. I'm going to add that piece on the top cluster. I'm going to definitely add a few sprigs because, again, those are instant fillers and they make everything look really great. So I'm tucking things here and there, and I'm having a bit of a play. There's that doily again. It's gonna end up somewhere, just not sure where at this point. So this little piece that was pre-stamp, the blue was a little bit too bright, so I added a little bit of toffee ink to it. I'm gonna add this sprig here, and this one here, you see there's dots at the back. It's one that I actually ripped off of one of my previous layout, and I kept it for a rainy day or whenever. Well, here we are, whenever day, and let's use it for this cluster. So I'm going to add this one here, and those were stamped, I don't know how long ago, but they were stamped a little while ago, and I'm going to add them. And I find that when you group like things together, it is just so much easier when you're doing a scrapbook layout or a card. I think that this is going to be a lot of fun just to kind of create as I go or as I need them. So you can see here that I am fussing around with this first one, and I'm adding all of my pieces, and you know what? I think this one looks pretty good. This is definitely going to make an appearance on a card, and we're going to move on to this one right here. Now this one right here, I used that stamped image, and I thought, you know what, let's be mindful and let's cut this piece at 5.5 so that when I want to add this to an A2 size card, I know that I already have my base. Now this is a little bit different than creating a card because I don't have my card base to define the spaces where I have to stop. So the creativity flows a little bit better, and I just add pieces here and there, and they're pretty random pieces, like these half circles that were part of my stash, these stitched circle. I'm just adding them here and there, and look at that little doily piece has made an appearance and is going to live on this cluster right here. Look at that. I'm pretty happy about that. Not sure why, but I'm pretty happy about that. I like this one. It looks good and it was easy to put together. Now let me show you. I decided to bring in a card base and kind of look at my clusters to see if they were making sense. And I think they do. Look at this one. Isn't that great? Now you could use a pattern paper at the back. You could use a stencil at the back of this base. But definitely keep that in mind when you're building your clusters, if you want to use them for cards, that is. Now remember when I said to you, if the cluster doesn't work right away, take your pieces, set it to the side, and work on another one. That one on the left, for whatever reason, I just couldn't figure it out, or the pieces weren't kind of naturally falling in place. And they often do because you're working with the same size images. So this one here, as you can see, came together very nicely. I'm going to add another pennant, and I don't know about you guys, but I think those need to face down, right? So we're going to move them down here at the bottom, and I'm happier with that. So you can see that all of these pieces are easy enough to move around because we're working on a small little canvas, if you want. And the canvas is that back piece that I used just to help me ground some of my pieces. Now this one here, probably wouldn't have put it on a card, but it was in my stash and I thought because it's vellum, I think I can get away with it. It's definitely a different shape than everything else, but I think it works. So I'm going to add that little flower, and originally that poor little flower was sitting in my little container that I have, and I didn't want to use it because it didn't turn out exactly the way I wanted. But by hiding the petals that were not aligned, it's perfect on a cluster. So there you go. This one here is a great example. Now this was a sprig that I cut out of this little piece, and I'm going to add my stamped image right here. I'm going to add a zip strip. Again, this one here got some ink on it. I'm sure this happens to you too. I'm just going to cut that off. I'm going to add a little bit of ink. And again, perfect for a cluster, right? Waste not, want not. So I really do like when I do take the time to do this, and I really should take more time. When I'm done with a project, when I'm done creating a project with a paper pack, we often stamp double, triples, or maybe that's just me. I'm not sure. Do you do that too? Because I know that I tend to stamp a lot and cut out a lot of die cuts. And that's why I end up with so many little pieces, and I just don't want to throw them out every time. So this was the perfect project to show you how to use your scraps right here. So we're going to build again with those little sprigs. Those are so easy. Instantly your cluster will look really, really good. I wanted to take a moment here and let you know that both Chelsey and Janice decided to play along this month, and we are featuring the stamp of the month and different ways to use it. Now I'm making clusters. Janice is going to do some pretty funky stamping with it, and at this point here I'm not sure what Chelsey is doing, so it's going to be a surprise for me as well. So I will have those videos linked in the description box below, and if you want more inspiration with this stamp set, I highly recommend you grab a coffee and you watch those videos. Now let's get back to these clusters right here, and let's see what it looks like on a card base. Now when I put this one on a card base, it was a little crooked because I've got a straight edge. And I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of my pieces I'm using tape runner. And the reason for that, you can lift your piece. Now, if I was to use Tombow glue on all of those pieces, they would be really, really hard to lift. But because I'm using a tape runner for a lot of them, it actually works out really nicely. Now, to get back to that cluster that is not working for me for whatever reason, but now I have tons of examples right in front of me, and I'm going to use that to inspire me to create this one. So I know that that size works out. So I'm just going to rip out that piece. And then I am going to add just a little bit of water. I just find that when you're curling up the edges of the cardstock, if you add a little bit of water, it's just a lot easier. So I'm going to do that for this piece. And I know that because I've already done it, so the first one you see on the top left, it's the same size roughly. I kind of used it as a guide and I ripped my piece of cardstock. I'm adding a little bit of ink distressing, and all of a sudden this cluster that was giving me a bit of, an issue at the beginning is coming together really nicely. So that's what I mean when you are building clusters. If they don't work right away, set it to the side and work with something else. I don't even remember the pieces that I put together originally at the beginning, but definitely I did not use all of them and I moved them around just so that they would fit nicely. I brought back the stamp of the month and I used a small little image to just add a little bit of detail to that piece of mulberry cardstock. I felt that it was a little bit bland, and by stamping randomly, it just looks better all of a sudden. So we're going to add a few of those sprigs here and there, and there you have it. All right, let's take a look at the completed clusters, and you'll notice that some of them have a little bit more on them, and I have a new one. I tend to put things away as I'm doing my editing for my videos, and then, sometimes other things come up. So definitely, I hope that you draw some inspiration from these clusters, and don't forget to use a base card to kind of help you with your clusters, to make sure that you're staying within the lines if you want. This one here is probably my favorite one. I really like the way that this one turned out. And had I wanted to do this on the card base right away, probably wouldn't have turned out this way. So these are all great for cards, as you can see right here. And I'm sure that I can use them on scrapbook pages. So here are the scrapbook pages that I've done. That's at the beginning of the video if you're catching the tail end of this. And this is a really good stamp set. So I hope that you grab this one before it is gone. It is available for the month of September. I will put all of that information down below. Don't forget to check out Chelsey's and Janice's videos as well. They will be listed down below. If you've enjoyed this video and you've picked up a few helpful tips, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. It does go a long way. That's it for me today. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I'll see you in the next video.